Oh, now that.
Mr. Kibler.
Yeah.
How do you do, sir? Very nice to meet you.
And you. I'm not
Yeah.
sure who's who, but
I'm who and he's who.
Well,
the Who twins.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Jeff.
And this is Mr. Charles Kibler.
Yeah, that's it, Charlie. Chuck.
Ah, good.
Charles.
It is quite an honor, sir, to have you on the show.
We have never met you. We've never talked to you, but we're going to guess that it's an honor to meet you. So
it's an honor to meet you guys, obviously.
Oh, well, thanks. I love your background. Is that real stuff? Yeah, that's not just one of those fake backgrounds you can put up like balloons and clowns and things like that.
Yeah, it's real stuff. It's a bunch of reenactor hats is the thing you see, and then some pictures, canteens, haversacks, and I had to put some ASL things back here.
Oh yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah, it's and then games galore, some books and stuff. I don't have enough shelf room for all the stupid games and books.
That's the kind of. And are you in a basement or what kind of room?
Yeah. I'm in my office, which is that I do my artwork in. I mean, I could rotate the computer, but I don't think it's going to be that exciting. So
yeah, no, that's fine. But that's the kind of basements we like to see, is just jammed full of goodies like that. What's the hat with the black with the long white?
That's my wife's hat.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Chair, sorry about that. It's a nice little top hat kind of thing. We do 1870s reenacting sometimes.
Okay.
And, that's what that's for. And I kind of graduated recently from doing Civil War reenacting, where I did both sides. I just wasn't just like a, gosh, rebs are for everybody, but I was in groups that were pretty authentic oriented. You always carry everything in on your back. It's not like we drove big trailers in with wall tents and cots and refrigerators. It's if you can't fit it in your knapsack or your horse collar blanket roll, then you're not taking it.
Yeah, I always find that fascinating, the extreme measures people will go for their authenticity.
So are you, and you, okay, you said you still do a little bit of reenacting. Okay, because we had the best one up here in Illinois. It was this, oh shoot, now I can't come up with the name of it, but it was vast, and it was kind of colonial, frontiersy, everything around that time span, and it was really, really large. And I had only gone a couple years as a observer, and sadly, they were saying it was going to be the last year, and part of it was just getting enough help to help run the thing overall. But I remember one of the reenactors was saying, like the young people reenactors, that he used to love the sense of camaraderie and hanging out at the tents and singing by the campfire for real, at night and stuff, and meeting new people. And he said a lot of the newer, younger reenactors would kind of like just go back in their tents and get on their phones.
Yeah.
And he
thought that's what happens.
Yeah, he thought it was much less camaraderie based. So I don't know if you've experienced.
You shouldn't even have your phone in a reenactment. That's just like no thing. I mean, unless you're a doctor, you got to, or you're one of the people running the events and you need the communications. Bringing a phone or any kind of anachronistic device to an event's a no. But some events allow it, but the good ones don't.
Yeah, you have a regular life, I guess. You got to stay in touch somehow at some point. But well, this show is 80% about advanced squad leaders. So talking with you, I've always seen your name. I'm the long-term ASLer, got in 80. I didn't do the original squad leader, got in right with advanced. Just started miniature wargaming, and then my buddy's like, we have to try this new thing, the Cadillac of war games. It's advanced squad leader.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's expensive. I don't know if I can afford it. And So that was my start. Jeff came in later, but although Jeff, it's been,
I'm a newbie. It's been 15 years.
yeah, I don't know if that counts as newbie anymore,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I don't, that's my excuse too. I'm a newbie.
Just
That would-
among us.
That would account for my poor playing. But how long have you been involved with the ASL, Charlie?
ASL itself, I got involved with when they first conceived it back in the early 80s. You know, I guess Don decided that they needed to put all the rules together. Well, Don and Bob McNamara, I'm not really sure. Bob, but I think Bob was hired really to kind of do that for Don, to put all the, you know, the original Cross of Iron, Crescendo of Doom, GI Anvil of Victory all into one thing. And then it just kind of grew to you know, the massive proportions it is. I played my first squad leader probably after I got out of college in 78 or 79, when a friend of mine, I think a roommate I had in college, his brother had bought the game and thought it was horrible, and he gave it to my roommate, who my roommate said, "Here, you can have this because I don't want to play it either." And I said, "Oh my God, this has individual tanks and squads and leaders. This is so cool. Look at the map boards. They go together all different ways." And before that, I had only been, you know, my wargaming was mostly like one SPI game called Full to Gap, which was a modern warfare thing I'd bought. That was my first real war game. And then Risk, you know, that was it. So
Yeah, it's interesting. And of course, we only talk to people that are still in ASL, but we don't hear a lot about people that say, yeah, I tried ASL, whatever it was, 40 years ago, and decided I didn't like it. Pretty much everybody, like I say, they're still in it. They loved it right out of the box. No pun
Yeah,
intended.
well, there was some resistance from some people. I think there's a small group that still plays squad leader somewhere.
yeah, there is, because I go to the World Board Gaming Championships,
Oh,
and there's still a squad leader tournament.
Oh,
I kind of
all
find
right.
that amazing.
That is
The
amazing.
original squad leader rules, they still give a plaque out for that. They don't have an ASL tournament there because I guess they wouldn't get that many people. That's really for the specialized ASL tournaments, you know.
And those are the guys that have to carry all their stuff in their backpack. They're not allowed to bring the van.
Well, I don't know about that. Oh, well, you mean at the WBC or the ASL?
Yeah, like at the WBC. They're probably like those militant reenactors where they just want to play squad leader, would never consider playing ASL.
I think some actually go back to playing squad leader just to play that in the tournament, but I'm not really
Oh.
sure.
Yeah.
And they probably have to kind of try to forget all the you know, fire as you move rules and all that stuff.
Right.
But some are probably have. I imagine that some have never played anything but squad leader.
And you got the game, got passed to you, you played it, you liked it. And how long after that? I mean, you started obviously getting very deeply involved with it. How did that come about?
With ASL, you mean?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
ASL.
I mean, I was there as a consultant and play testing from day one, pretty much. Because I had just moved to Baltimore in early 1980. I think that was the year. It was that or 81, but at any rate, and you know, shortly after that, they brought Bob McNamara in. Don knew I kind of played the games, and so, you know, we would go there to play test ASL from, you know, the very first edition of the rules they had printed out on the old kind of printers that had perforations up the side.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they would print page after page that were perforated.
Yep.
I don't even know what that stuff's called, but
Yeah. And that was with Avalon Hill, the old company, right, when it started. And they were, and then you were involved, and then the original boards then were painted by someone else for the squad leader and Anvil of Victory and GI and all that.
Yeah, the first 8 boards were all painted by a very good artist. Courtney Allen comes to mind, but I'm not sure that's the right artist. I would have to look in the credits. And then the original 9, 10, and 11 were actually painted by a lady that worked there at Monarch Services, which was the printing company for Avalon Hill. That's where I was actually at on Harford Road. But the story is there, and there was horrible artwork. The first renditions, the first edition, 9, 10, and 11 were just horrible. And I talked Don into, let me repaint these because I don't know if you've actually seen the first ones, but they probably not because they're
we got our boards with the advanced set, so not from.
It's like neon colors. There's a fingerprint on one side of one board, and it's just some ugly stuff going on. The roads are orange, and the hills, and there was the Christmas tree woods on one of the boards, looked just like a little Christmas tree, a diamond shape, and
like a side view.
Yeah. Well, I guess any straight on view of a Christmas tree thing, but it didn't have a stump to it. But so I did redo those boards for Don.
Was that artist's choice, or was that just a printing error? The things that you talk about.
It was artist problem. Don basically, I think Don was trying to get a cheaper thing than the artist that did the very good artwork. The boards 1 through 8, and then 11, 12, 13, and 14 that came out in the GI Anvil of Victory game. That was all the same artist, I think. I'm not an authority on that, but Don wanted to try the lady that worked at the art department, and she was actually an ex-nun. Her first name was Marge. She was just quitting when I was kind of hired, and that was one of the reasons they also hired me there, because the art director Gene Bear knew that she was getting ready to lose Marge for, I guess she was retired. She was, an older lady, and an ex-nun, which was kind of interesting, that had, and was doing art and paste up work. But she had told Don, "Oh, I can do those maps," but they didn't turn out too good. And they were never released in any game. The original boards, 9, 10, 8, 9, and 10, I think. No, 9, 10, and 11.
Okay. And so then you did original work, and now that would be with paint, correct?
Yes. All the ASL and SL maps I did up until I don't know. I mean, the first Red Barricades, the original Red Barricades were doing paint. I actually painted the Red October map to match the Red Barricades, but then MMP could not get a hold of the old negatives or artwork for the Red Barricades when they wanted to reprint it. So they had me redo both maps digitally. So those are, the new versions of those that came out in the Red Factories game are both digitally done.
Okay. I still have to open my Red Factories, but so then when you're painting, medium, acrylic, or oil paints, or
acrylic,
fast dry. And then what were the challenges with doing that kind of work compared to the computer?
It's so much easier on the computer. Let that be said.
I would guess.
It's just like, you make a mistake and it's so easy to redo it. Undo, Control Z, or you just use a B eraser and this and that. The ASL maps weren't quite as hard because the paint on the base levels was a thick paint. It was a non-see-through paint. Whereas some of the maps I did, like if you've seen the great campaigns of the Civil War that Joe Balkowski designed that MMP is now doing, those were done like a watercolor. The base tan I would put down that first, and it's a very thin coat. And then the green, I would have to be sure to get only in the hexes that had the rolling hills, and then so on. And if I ever got anything wrong, it's very hard to fix that. And there was at least 1 or 2 hexes I had to try to fix by painting over, say, the rolling terrain with a light tan to match the base color. Really hard to do. And I was working under like an acetate overlay hex grid, and I would have to lift the hex grid up, put it down, and I would put little points in pencil where each hex vertex was on the artwork that I could erase later, so I could see where the hex was without drawing a hex field, I could just put the dots down on the map. But then I had to be sure not to paint over them, or they would kind of permanently put the dots there if I got paint over them. So there was a lot of challenges. Yeah, you really couldn't make a mistake when you were painting very much, especially if it's on the watercolor type maps.
The tolerances are so tiny. I don't know if that's the word, because, you know, a lot, so many times I look at a map and I'll think, oh, I can take this shot. I can hit them. It's 8 hexes away, but it just cuts through the edge of a hill or woods or something. I mean, how did you get the tolerances that, and were you conscious of that? Like you couldn't have a line of sight that was longer, or you knew that you had to bring this?
No, I would never make a map board and check all the lines of sight. That would
Oh,
just
you
be
wouldn't?
crazy.
Okay.
Nah.
So they were just basically generic kind of map boards, and then you just made them, and then the guys kind of
Okay.
made scenarios.
Just work with what you got. Yeah.
I always swear the devil is at work there, messing up my shots. So I don't know. I guess I'm wrong.
No, I mean, and you know, on the ASL maps, of course, blocking terrain has to be nice and crisp. The edges do, hopefully. So you got to have the map when it's printed. It needs to be registered. All the 4 colors and the 4 color process need to be registered tightly with each other, or it'll get blurry. You know, the art will. So you don't want that.
No,
But
because
when
that's
you said you redid some maps, like from Red Barricades. So you had an original map and then you redid it digitally?
I originally painted the original Red Barricades was painted back in the late mid 80s. I guess it was like mid 80s even. I'm not sure exactly when. And that was painting, you know, it was all brown paint for the base color, and then, you know, the buildings that were all done on cardboard and pasted onto the map. So that's why you get a nice sharp edge with the buildings. I would cut them out with X-Acto knife.
Oh,
First I would get this kind of thin cardboard, you know, not corrugated, but a card stock, I guess. And I would paint a gray tone over it for the stone buildings and a wood tone for the wooden lighter buildings. And then I would just draw the little building shapes on those cardboards and cut them out with X-Acto knives and go around each edges also. Otherwise you'd have a white edge if I didn't go around with paint on the edges of the buildings. And they would actually give them a little shadow to the buildings too. You kind of notice some of those old buildings that were painted. But then, you know, back in the 2000s, late 2000s, MMP needed to have both maps done and released. So they had me redo Red Barricades digitally and then redo my Red October map digitally too. So they paid me twice to do that map. And the painted map has never been released, but I copied it pretty closely.
now is the historical map. What did you use to tell you where to paint what?
Several sources, aerial photographs that were very detailed, and I would blow them up. I had these, you know, period aerial photographs that the Germans took and that were in the German archives, and I was sent some of them. And I also had maps printed by the Germans or captured by them that showed with outlines of all the factories. And you basically just, or, you know, factories and the buildings, all the other buildings, and you just put a hex grid over it and you try to get that to scale as much as possible. The map scale, you know, the 40 meters per hex. And then you just, you know, like all war games, you make decisions on what fits where sometimes, but that's the gist of it, I guess.
Yeah, so they don't always fit exactly. So you just kind of have to move a little building a little bit.
Oh yeah, you
Set
got
it in
to
there.
chop off a corner of a building, or in this case, in the Red Barricades or Red October, I could rubble the corner of the building if it was just popping over the hex grid, you know, because you don't want that in ASL. You don't want part of a building going over into a hex it shouldn't be in. But yeah, you just, or you slightly move walls here and there just to fit everything to the hex grid. Same with roads and creeks and gullies and everything else. It's the same for all war games, be it ASL, you know, 40 meters per hex, or some other game like the great campaigns of the Civil War where it's a mile per hex. So,
Have you ever had to go back in and change anything once you got it to the game developer or designer? Or
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you make changes. Sure. I don't make changes just because, oh, this would be better as a 4-hex building instead of 3-hex, but because like you get it wrong the first time you go in there and fix it, but not because I want to fix it or change it. But and then sometimes there's like these 50-50 decisions, when you're laying things out. You got a road going through half of this hex and half of that hex, and then the creek over here, and then you put the road over here, and then you realize, well, the creek's got to be along this thing, so you got to shift the road over or whatever. So that's more in the layout process than the final art. But in final art, you got to sometimes move things around too, especially if the designer says, we got to change this, Charlie. So
then, like, the designer of the Great Campaigns maps decide what hex is what, or did they just kind of give you a historical? You looked at a historical map again and made it
all
to
of those maps, the ones that are being designed now are being done by Ed Beach. He's taken over the reins of that game from Joe Balkowski, who did the first several, I don't know, half dozen or almost dozen games of that. And Ed Beach now is doing that. But yeah, I'm given a layout, and Ed has a very detailed layout. It's all done. He already figures out where everything goes. All I'm doing is doing the final art. Now, I can sometimes find a problem or something, where he might have missed something, or I'll question it. But he's consulted, and he and then all the other kind of same jobs, the designers. If I think something's questionable or like should be in a different place, I'll question them and say, I've got this map that says this town's not that close to this other town or something, as an example. And but that's like the maps for the Great Campaigns are all done from period maps and stuff, I believe. I know Joe once told me, Joe Balkowski, that he had actually got county, like 1860s or 1850s county maps to do those, to get the terrain right and stuff. Now, I'm not sure what Ed's using, but I imagine he's talked to Joe.
Did you do the maps for King and Country?
That's the ASL.
Those North Africa desert maps?
No, they had
No?
Kurt Miller redo those. Now, I did the original desert maps when I painted them for the West of Alameen game.
Yeah.
And then they were redone by Kurt Miller before MMP was started using me to do the ASL maps again. They had Kurt redo a whole lot of the ASL maps, and I told him, why didn't you call me? So, oh, Charlie, we didn't know you were willing to do these. I said, well, you don't know if you don't ask. And that was also kind of the time I was getting back into doing artwork. I had been working in software companies for a while, and but now I have recently redone, and I don't even know if they've released it yet. The board 25 and the escarpment overlay. That's been done to look much more like the original board 25 and escarpment, and it's being released as 2 different full map boards. So you basically have one map board that has board 25 with the escarpment on it. Already there. You don't have to cut it out. You don't have to put it on and tack it down. It's there. So you'll have a board 25, and then you have an escarpment, whatever number, whatever they call it, maybe 25E.
The escarpment was really large. Well, I'm imagining it's in Hollow Legions, right? Which just came out. The reprint.
I'm sorry, what?
They did the reprint of the Italians. Is that, and that's got all the desert. It's just coming out. I don't have it yet.
Okay.
But yeah, they're releasing it now. People have been starting to receive it. It's probably in there.
I can't really keep up with what they release and what they release when. And even when I want samples, they say, well, Charlie, you got to tell us these things. They don't put me on a simple feeder list that gives me all the ASL stuff I paint. I got to know enough to ask for it. And the problem is I don't usually know when they release things. But
it is a challenge. It is a challenge.
Yeah,
keeping up.
It is. One of our Twitter, where on our Twitter account. I asked some people if they had questions for you. Colin Hunter just wants to tell you your maps are fantastic, which of course I would agree. I'm just in love with them. Of course, it's part of loving the game, but I just
Well,
think the
thanks,
maps
Colin.
and yeah, and the Stalingrad stuff is just mind blowing too. But one person says it's Fawner that they'd like to hear about the Solitaire ASL. Did you design part of the game system, or is that?
Pretty much all of that came from me. And it's an interesting story,
Oh.
actually,
Yeah, we
because
love
I kind of just did some tables up to entertain myself and come up with a system to where I could just play on my own down here and test ASL rules. So, and then it just kind of took off from there. And I never, when I did that, I had no intention to publish a solitaire game through, Avalon Hill, or even have a system. It was, but it kind of grew into that. And then I showed it to, I don't even remember, Don, Bob, or both of them. And they said, yeah, this has some promise. This kind of works and stuff, and it was published, and we made it look pretty, and prettied up all the tables, because the original tables I did on a typewriter. I mean, it was
Wow.
typed them out and glued down changes with rubber cement, paper and stuff. I mean, this was back in the 80s when we were testing the ASL rules. And I think that those were kind of done for myself, so I could just test different things and stuff at home here when I was playing. And then I just came up with a random system to play as the Germans originally only. And then you would have Russians come in, and I would just kind of have a movement system, and yeah.
one of the most underappreciated ASL developments that the Solitaire system makes an infinitely replayable solo system, an absolutely wonderful one. So I thought it sold out very quickly. I think there's a lot of guys who have trouble finding opponents, and it seemed like the Solitaire concept was needed. There was no Vassal online gaming at the time, right?
Well, you could play by true mail, like you could send letters back and forth. I did that once or twice with guys, where we'd actually send letters in the post back and forth. This was before email. And you would look at a paper and consult dice rolls or something in the stock. That was really bizarre, but it worked. And yeah, there wasn't really any kind of system to do it. And Don actually had an idea to do it in the original ASL rules when they came out, but he had never really thought about it and how it was ever even going to work. So I guess they embraced what I had done kind of by accident, again, and we packaged it up. And so that's one of my few designs.
Yeah, I thought it's very good. It has whole tables for how Jeff, you have never tried it, right? I've played maybe
I never have tried it. I've always wanted to. It's on my list.
I've done like maybe 4 or 5 scenario things from it, and so the forces then roll for their reaction to you based on various things, and you roll to see what's out there to start with. It's random and kind of like random encounter tables for everything, but yeah, really good stuff.
I actually got it out and played it a few months ago, because I had never played the final printed thing. I said, I got to do it, because I had only played with my made up counters years ago. So I actually got it out and played it and got the little nice printed counters, and it was fun. And I always liked the thing, my favorite part about the ASL Solitaire is you really never know what's going to happen in the scenario, with the random events that can happen every turn. And then even from one scenario to the next of the same type of scenario, you might have a more chance, a greater chance of random events happening for one side or the other. You might get a whole bunch of good reinforcements and just kick some butt, or the other way around. And you got to definitely get your guys out of the field until so they don't get wiped out.
Now, have you developed a Don Sinabarcus asked what remaining battles you're interested in developing? Have you developed any of the actual like historical games other than the maps or anything?
No.
Okay.
I'm not working on anything I mean, I've actually got good pictures of the tractor factory and, you know, the third factory there in Stalingrad, but I know it was actually another version of that was published by some other company or one of those third wheel kind of.
Dzerzhinsky Tractor Works or something like that from that
the
Critical Hit, or
I think it might have been a critical hit release. I'm not really sure.
yeah, it was probably the Dzerzhinsky Tractor Works, I think.
Yeah. Now I don't have anything in the plans for that, and as old as I am now, I'm probably not going to do that and develop scenarios and campaigns for it and everything. I think I'm probably done doing the scenarios even too. But you know, I did a bunch of scenarios back in my day. But we never kept track of who did what scenarios at Avalon Hill. You know,
Yes.
I kind of know some of them, but MMP, when they reprint them, they hit me up. Charlie, do you remember who did this scenario? And I said, God, I don't know. It looks, it's not mine. Maybe Rex. So, but
You keep up with your, so you're not going to develop new stuff, but you keep up playing ASL? Do you play regularly?
I was for a little while before the pandemic. I had a guy that would come down from New Jersey, Joe Bordenero, and he was actually a fellow reenactor that I met. Joe was a friend of mine, Bruce Milligan, that was also an Avalon Hill alumni, and Joe, Bruce, and I are all Civil War reenactors. But Joe would come down a few times, and we'd set up on the table and play some all day. You know, give me a break. I haven't seen. Well, I haven't played ASL now in probably a year. But yeah, it's definitely like riding a bicycle. I don't remember some of the really weird arcane rules, but for the most part, I can pick it up anytime still.
And what about tournaments back in the day? Did you attend tournaments much?
I'm not a big tournament guy.
No.
When I would go, I would sometimes. I mean, I know some of the early Avalon cons. Another thing I did was I made a deluxe 3-dimensional board, and I designed scenarios for it. I have like styrofoam hills made out of foam core, little buildings and trees and stuff. I could change it all around. I even had little I guess N-scale railroads I would put down, and and then we play with micro armor, and I would do scenarios like big curse scenarios where tanks were a lot of fun, where we'd have maps just laid out by me. I would lay them out and we'd play that. So that's pretty much my gist of tournament stuff. If I ever went to the Oktoberfest back when Fish Connor ran it, I would usually just sit there and play some Red Barricades or Red October scenarios or something, you know, with guys, play testers.
Do you have any favorite nationalities that you like to play in the system?
I usually pick the Russians up. Sometimes because a lot of times when I do play with buddies of mine, I'm drinking a lot, and I feel like I can play the Russians when I drink a lot, you know. So it's like everyone, okay, let's do the human way, or you know, like let's get in the Russian mentality of just advancing forward and stuff. So it's less critical things, but yeah, I like all the things. I don't care for the Japanese only because I don't like learning all the new rules of that. So I stay away from the Pacific. The only time I ever played it was play testing it back in the day. You know, caves and tsunamis and beach landings are out of my scope of learning.
Yeah, Jeff and I have been doing a lot of those on the Vassal during that first year of COVID, and we just jumped right in. The good thing about that, it gave us a place to have a little game set up for a couple hours that we could hit twice a week. And then we found we were taking our time. There was no sense for us to have to clean up at the end of the night and have game for some other guy coming over 2 days later set up. And we just really took our time and learned the rules a lot better. But we have done a lot of Pacific stuff. And yeah, some of it's, I guess caves are notoriously complicated.
Yeah.
But I just love the concepts of all the stuff, you know. And it's interesting with the boards. I've said this on our show before, but when I first started playing Advanced Squad Leader and just loving the boards, everything about it, of course, and I would be driving to Ohio to my wife's family, often, and there were times I'd look out at that terrain and just see
Have to make the
everything
board.
as hexes. There's a woods. Oh, there's the creek. There's and everything kind of like open ground,
Right.
just kind of translated in my brain. Too much ASL on the brain, but
I remember just getting some aerial photographs sometimes, or looking at aerial photographs in some of the books, say about the Battle of the Bulge, and saying, "Oh, that section would make a nice map," And I actually did that at least once, where I found an aerial photograph in a book and just did a map from it, And then you have to adapt the roads coming in at the areas. I think board 19 might have the number wrong, but it has a big field and a woods along one side. But yeah, and I remember back in my days at Avalon Hill, if I ran out of things to do and I didn't have another job to work on, I would usually get out a blank hex grid and just scribble down a map layout, and get the markers out, color the woods green and this and that. There's Mishka.
is that a Russian name too?
Yep. My cats all have Russian names or something there. I have Tatiana, Mishka, and Lada.
Wow, interesting.
This is the only boy. There he is, knocking around.
Knocking over the
But,
solitaire game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Oh,
in all
yeah.
your games? Do you have any that kind of stick out in your mind? It's funny how a few games that I have played really stick in my mind as that were really fun. Do you have some that?
Jeff, do you mean whole game sets or
Yeah, like a whole
scenarios?
scenario that you played.
Scenario.
A scenario, some encounter with somebody.
Hill 253.
Okay.
I remember playing the original Cross of Iron version of this, probably one of the most fun scenarios I was playing with a future brother-in-law of mine, David Shields, back in when I still lived in Tennessee. And he would come over to my house and we would get feeling good and play ASL, and I was playing the Russians and he was playing the Germans, and it was a great scenario. So it was the original Cross of Iron scenario, and I remember we each time one of us would kill one of the other guy's units, be it a KIA on a squad or a tank, you got to take a shot of liquor. So the more kills we got, the more buzz we got. So it was like the evening out process. But we actually finished the scenario, and I remember going down to the wire. I think I remember going down to the wire. It was like 3 in the morning. So
Oh man.
that was one scenario that was good. Yeah, it was like a curse scenario, right?
Yeah, it had like all the Russian counters, I think, or something in it.
No, it wasn't a monster,
Infantry.
but it had lots of different. Yeah, it had like your SU-152s, SU-122s, all the fun toys. Had Panther tanks for the Germans. I don't know if there was a Tiger in that. There was Panthers. There was air support. Good things. Engineers, demolition charges. If
Yeah, and
lots of
were you drinking vodka for that game?
we were probably drinking Jack Daniels or Jim Beam. Kind of what I'm drinking here tonight is just some gin.
Traditional.
There we go. Oh, that's a favorite right there.
In fact, I need to pour me some reinforcements. If you
Yeah,
don't.
there.
I'm running dry on my glass.
Yeah. Ammo shortage. And did you design for other companies, other maps and stuff? Or is it pretty much just been?
All Avalon Hill MMP.
Yeah.
My only designs, which are very few, have pretty much were all under AH or MMP,
Okay.
like the Red October, the scenarios, and under back when I worked at Avalon Hill, it was just ASL work. Yeah, ASL stuff, be it boards, scenarios, or the occasional game, I guess.
Yeah. Did you want to? Did you look at other games and think, man, I would love to design boards for that?
Not really,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess. I mean, well, I mean, when you say design boards for that, it has to be kind of a system that uses generic boards,
Hmm.
right? But
Right.
no, I was pretty much just kept busy doing the artwork that was handed to me. It was pre-designed by the game designers.
Okay. Okay.
And then the deluxe boards, did you do those or is that someone else?
I did the art for
The
all of
original
them.
ones? Yeah, so
Yeah.
the difference is there. You could get in and do the tracks on the dirt and everything, if I remember
And I tried
correctly.
to replicate that a little bit when I did the recently released digital versions of them.
Oh, okay.
I had to experiment and do some fancy brushes. I'm not the absolute best in Photoshop by a long shot, but I've learned a lot. And I tried to kind of texturize the things, and how I actually did the base for even the digital ones was paint sections of small boards like I did the original boards, because the art for all these original maps it's all gone. You know, it was all destroyed when they sold Avalon Hill. So, but anyway, to get back to my thing, I actually painted up some small boards, you know, like 12 by 12, the way I did the full maps, and then I would just scan them in and put them together and then blend them so that it would look like they were more painted. You actually get more of the texture of the painting on the base map for the new ones, but then the buildings and stuff were all done totally digitally.
Yeah, because we just reviewed the new deluxe pack on the show, and I haven't looked that closely at those boards because I had played all of the originals, you know, multiple times from the old Streets of Fire and Hedgerow Hell and all that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Love those. Well, I like the simplicity of not having to deal too much with strategies of moving around in too big of an area. So it was quicker to play, which I know a lot of people don't like that, but it was a good change of pace for me. And then the details of the tracks and everything that you got into those on the larger scale is really nice.
I like playing on the deluxe. I love getting out the micro armor. In fact, when my buddy Joe Bordenero would come over, that's all we would play was deluxe. Of course, it's tough trying to find good scenarios for the deluxe sometimes, but it is nice because you got the big hexes and you can throw in the micro armor. I have a pretty good library of micro armor here, and a lot of it was because Avalon Hill was sent all these micro armors by the GHQ company because nobody else wanted them. So I did them and I painted a lot of them.
Yeah, I had a couple sets of them. I actually sold them with the names of the scenarios on them. If I remember correctly, there was some of that. Well, then, since you were involved in Avalon Hill, we have not gotten to talk to McNamara. I don't know how to get in touch with him. Don Greenwood, I think we got in touch with him. I think he kind of said, not interested at the moment. But is Don running the board game championship still?
Don
WBC?
has no longer runs the WBC, but he still shows up there whenever they hold it. We're still
Okay.
holding our breath to see if it's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
Ken Guttermuth's now taken over the reins of what, you know, the convention director, but Don still shows up, and of course he's always playing Breakout Normandy there and a few other games. I could probably give you information to get a hold of Bob McNamara.
That would
Whether
be
he'd
really,
want to talk, I don't know, but it's possible.
yeah. Yeah. Some people just, you know, don't feel like I have to talk for like half an hour to an hour. What am I going to say? But these interviews usually work out really well. And of course, I'm just fascinated with all of it. Jeff is too. And so you were at Avalon Hill as its demise was happening. I remember when
I
yeah,
was going to say I actually left in March of 94 or 95. I forget now which, but it was, and Avalon Hill still went on for 4 or 5 years after that. But I was
okay.
kind of like the rat in the sinking ship. I could see that things were going downhill, and then I was offered more money by somebody wanting to do a software company and, you know, want to bring me on. Bob McNamara and a few other Avalon Hill guys to do all computer games for him. That was when we worked at Talonsoft under Jim
Yeah.
Rose.
Talonsoft. Was that Avalon Hill was also going to start to explore the options of digital gaming, but
well, in fact, the Jim Rose that started Talonsoft and took all of us away from Avalon Hill was hired by Avalon Hill a few years prior to that to be the computer games director or whatever they call him.
Oh, okay.
So he was at Avalon Hill running the computer games for a while.
So then what did you do with it? Seems like a big switch to go to the digital gaming, like programming.
No, I wasn't doing that. Heavens no.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm lucky to get my computer to turn on in the morning, as they say. But I was pretty much designing scenarios and maps. I guess my main forte was doing maps and stuff. Jim Rose would have me run down to DC. We found the Library of Congress map division in the Madison building has incredible maps, just limitless, and so many old World War II maps, and a lot of captured Russian maps captured by the Germans, captured by the Allies. So you get all these really detailed Russian terrain maps and stuff, 1/25th scale, 1/50th scale of pretty much any spot in Russia. Well, or Russia back then, the USSR and stuff. I've got a lot of photocopies of those maps still because I wasn't able to take some of them when I left Talonsoft, or actually years later when Talonsoft closed down. Somebody said, "Do you want these boxes of maps?" I said, "Yeah." But so I was kind of doing scenarios and artwork for maps and stuff at Talonsoft. Bob McNamara was there too, designing kind of what units go in and the unit strengths and this and that. Kind of the same stuff he was doing at Avalon Hill. So, figuring out all the different armor strengths for the tanks and this and that. Because we were doing these World War II games for a Talonsoft that were tactical, not quite as tactical as ASL, but I can't remember the scale of the hexes, but it was a little up from 40 meters a hex. It might have been 100 meters a hex. I'm not sure, but that sounds right.
Yeah, and those were all war games again through Talonsoft.
Yeah. Those were war games for Talonsoft. They had a whole World War II series. They also had a Civil War series, which I love doing. We did Antietam, Gettysburg, Shiloh, Chickamauga. They even did a Waterloo. I guess that was the only foray into the Napoleonics. They did they might have done some other Napoleonic game. I'm not sure, but we did a bunch of Civil War games, which were a lot of fun. I designed a lot of scenarios for those and some of the maps. The battleground, they were all the battleground games. You had Battleground Ardennes, Battleground Antietam, Battleground Gettysburg, Battleground Waterloo, and the programmer was John Tiller, who, bless his heart, recently died. Actually, I heard he did all those the programming for the battleground games. John was a great guy. He lived in Alabama, got to work remotely. So he didn't have to put up with Jim Rose.
Never did get into the computer thing other than Sonic the Hedgehog, at home. Just these real, I just somehow my wife let me get a PlayStation, and then I could spend a couple hours on that. And then recently, face to face is what I love, being with people. So eventually my son just got me playing Neverwinter. I got him into the Vassal ASL. He had played a board game a couple times ASL with me. And then during COVID, we did on Vassal, we got a couple games in. And he's like, "Dad, why don't we try this D&D Neverwinter thing?" And it's so funny because I'm trying to control on my little pad in the middle of my computer instead of a mouse. And my character's twirling around in circles. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. This is so hard for me." But eventually I did figure it out. But I never got into any of that computer stuff. Just stuck with ASL and miniature wargaming. And luckily had a lot of people to game with. So through that era. When Avalon Hill had stopped producing, I remember what the last game was, Doom Battalions. Do you remember?
I don't know. I left Avalon Hill and I think it was March of '95.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that that last game, when I heard that they were going out of business and they only made a limited run of this last squad leader product. Luckily my local game store guy had an extra copy. My friend told me, who worked with the local game store guy, said, oh, he's sometimes keeps extra copies, you know, down under the counter there. Like if you ask him really nice, and he likes you a lot. And I
Look
called
what
him.
I
I
got.
said, I went over there to Charlie Prosek shop. It's real famous around Illinois.
Mhm.
Charlie, I heard this company's gone under. They only made so many of these game. And he goes, yeah, I got one down here. You can have it. And I'm like, oh. I thought, of course, that would be the end of the whole thing. And who would have known? We're all still doing this stuff. Oh, thanks to
Yeah.
MMP. Thanks to you for continuing to redo the maps and good
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, the MMP guys is, I think most people know, but maybe some don't. Perry Cock, Brian Youse, they were all early play testers for the ASL system. And they would come every play test night. I think it was on Thursdays that we would play at Reed Street, which was the downtown office, downtown Baltimore, where the game designers worked. And up on the third floor of Reed Street was just where we'd set up play test scenarios. And you know, we'd play the ASL rules. Sometimes we just do random scenarios or, you know, random units just to test the rules out, how defensive fire works and this and that. A lot of times they would have me kind of try to design something, but Perry and Brian were both some of the early play testers there, along with a buddy of mine named Tom Murphy, and then there was Harry Southwell and Tom Kirchner. Haven't heard from him in ages, but and a few others. You know, of course, Bob McNamara kind of oversaw it. Rex would play with us sometimes when he wasn't playing. Rex Martin, that was the editor of the General at the time. So Rex would play with us sometimes if he wasn't playing Empire in Arms with Craig Taylor.
Oh yeah, Craig Taylor. Met him in a tournament.
Craig
Well,
was a great guy.
It's been a wonderful interview with you. We want to thank you for your time. Do you have anything else, Jeff or Charlie, to add to the conversation? Anything we should have asked but didn't ask?
Have you revealed all your secrets?
Probably not,
Yeah.
but none that are that interesting that I can think of.
Well, if you think of anything, let us know, because it's been great talking to you, and
I've enjoyed it also. I hope I did okay. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
Oh, you did great. You know, our listeners love hearing from people that have been involved with the game for a long time. It's part of the history of the game, and it's been one of our most popular features of the podcast is doing interviews like this. So we really appreciate your contribution.
Yeah, because just listening to Jeff and I fumble through the rules or whatever we're doing just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, that can be tedious. So
well,
nice to have a celebrity on occasionally.
oh, you're a celebrity.
You,
Not me.
you are.
But,
Yeah, if you could get us in touch with Bob or any of the other old school guys who might want to come on, be glad to have them and all kinds of things.
hit me up with an email about Bob, and I can at least send you his email address. Rex too, if you wanted to talk to him.
Rex Martin, sure.
Rex is a great talker, so you know you get him on there. He probably never shut up.
And we just had Steve Swan on, and again, to Jeff doesn't go back to 85, but I'm like, Jeff, these are like all the names in the general and all the names of everyone there making these great things that we love. And so, yeah, it's been wonderful getting to meet you and talk with you. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Charlie. Stay well.
Y'all take care.
Yeah.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Adios.